And we're live.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's installment of Bringing the Zoo to You. The installment we have at 2 o'clock every day to connect you with the Topeka Zoo and the Topeka Zoo's message, and to hopefully invite you into the zoo even if you can't be here in person. Well, today we're going to start 7 days of something a little bit different because next week is Earth Day. And unfortunately, we're not able to invite you to the zoo to share Earth Day with us. That is unfortunate because the Topeka Zoo has become known for having one of the largest Earth Day events going on every year in Northeast Kansas. This year, however, for obvious reasons, we're going to have to replace that with something virtual. So we're going to turn Earth Day into Earth Week. And so for the next 7 days, we're going to join you at 2 o'clock each day with a different thought on how you can help save the planet. Today's thought is going to be on bringing wildlife into your own backyard. Whether you live in a place that has a big backyard, a small backyard, or perhaps in an apartment with no yard at all, but a balcony or patio, anything like that enables you to create an oasis for wildlife. If you already have that wildlife, you can support that wildlife with some of the things that we'll talk about today. If you don't have wildlife and you would like to bring wildlife into your yard or your area, doing some of the things we talk about today will invite them, it will bring them to your yard. If you build it, they will come. Every animal on earth, no matter what it is, no matter how big, no matter how small, has to have 4 things to survive. It has to have food, water, shelter, and space. Whether it lives on the tallest mountain or in the lowest valley or in the deepest part of the ocean, every living animal and plant has to have food, water, shelter, and space. Those are the 4 things it must have to survive. So if you provide those 4 things for wildlife in your yard, you will draw in lots of urban wildlife that you want, and you can select for the kinds of wildlife that you want to draw in. And you will support the wildlife that is already there. So let's start with food. One of the things that is most common for people to provide as a food source for wildlife that comes to your yard are things that feed birds. We have the more common bird feeders like this one, for example, that provides a wide range of different varieties of seed that are available to feed different kinds of birds. So how do you know what kind of seed to get for birds? Well, that's your first fun activity, is you have to survey the birds that are visiting your yard. So you have to pop out a chair and pour a glass of iced tea, pop the tab on an ice cold can of Pepsi or something like that. Sit there, look out the back window, look out the sliding glass door, look into your backyard in a way that does not disturb the bird life that is visiting your yard, and survey the kinds of birds that are coming to your yard so that you know what to provide food for. You can also provide the food that will draw the kinds of birds that you want to your yard. So, first thing you have to do is figure out what birds you already have that need food, or what birds you want to come to your yard and provide that kind of food. For example, a wide range of different kinds of feed that you could put in this type of a bird feeder to provide a wide variety of different kinds of birds. Other kinds of birds, you would have to provide something that requires a little bit more of a specialty. If you want hummingbirds, for example, you have to put out hummingbird feeders and you have to keep those stocked. And so that will bring those beautiful hummingbirds to your yard that you would enjoy seeing so much. And they're also pollinators. They'll help pollinate things around your property. The only thing we want to remember with hummingbirds is that you can make your very own hummingbird formula for this feeder using just sugar and water if you make it correctly. None of those red dye types of things, because we don't want that red color or any other chemicals in your hummingbird food. You can make your own very inexpensively and keep hummingbirds coming to your yard throughout the season that we have them here before they migrate out. Other kinds of bird feeders might require suet, for example, to feed them. So a wide range of different ways to feed birds, and there are more than these 3 kinds, of course, but you can go online or call us and we'll be happy to guide you through that, providing the kinds of food that will be able to draw the kinds of birds to your yard that you would enjoy just sitting and bird watching in your own backyard. So, food for birds, but we're going to feed other things also. We don't necessarily want to feed all mammals that come to your yard, because you would not, for example, want to go out of your way to attract skunks or raccoons into your yard. But there are some kinds that you might want to feed. For example, squirrels. You might want to put up a squirrel feeder. All that requires is the kind of food that squirrels will enjoy, and squirrels do enjoy this. So you put up a cob of corn out there somewhere, the squirrels will find it and they will appreciate it very much, but we don't want to forget the little things that we want to feed. For example, we have pollinators that visit our yard, and all you have to do for that is provide flowers that pollinators need, because most pollinators need nectar. There are other kinds that do other things, but most pollinators need to get nectar from flowers. And the flowers that they need to get nectar from are native flowers, because they are adapted to get their food from native flowers. So you can plant native flowers in your yard so that you can attract pollinators of all kinds of butterflies and non-flying insects and other kinds of bugs also that will come to your yard for the things that you plant out there. All we have to remember for that is when we start planting native flowers for pollinators, do a good thing for them, do a good thing for you, and plant different kinds of flowers that bloom in the spring and summer and fall so that you can provide food for pollinators all through the entire growing season. That will keep the pollinators coming to your yard so that you can sit back and watch the fruits of your labor as all those different kinds of beautiful butterflies and other pollinators are flittering all over your yard because of what you did for them and for you. So that's food. And we could talk for another hour on how to provide food for wildlife in your yard, but you can go online, find a lot more, or call us and we'll be happy to talk to you about it. But remember, food, water, shelter, space, the things that every living animal needs, including the kind of animals that you have in your yard or that you would like to draw to your yard. So, talked about food, let's go to water. Animals need a water source. The most common one of those for yards is the ordinary bird bath, because it doesn't provide water just for birds, it provides water for a lot of other wildlife, from everything from the butterflies and things that size all the way up to the bird size. They need water. You can provide that with something like a simple bird bath. When you have that bird bath full of water though, we would ask you to do two things please to make sure you're creating that oasis for wildlife in your backyard. The first one is put a rock or some gravel into that water source so that some things that are too small to just get into that deep water can still get the benefit of having that water available to them as well. A simple rock is all it takes, a little bit of gravel or pea gravel, anything that enables the smaller bug life, for example, to be able to stand there, get a drink, then take off into flight again. You also have to change the water every couple of days because the water needs to be clean for them. It can't be allowed to become covered with all the things that might make it a little bit slimy, a little bit old, a little bit non-usable. So keep that water clean and wildlife will continue coming to use it. Don't forget a ground source for water also. There are some things that won't be able to make it up to the bird bath. You might have turtles and tortoises or things like that that are coming through your yard, and they also need to be able to get that. Some kinds of lizards, some kinds of salamanders, all kinds of things that might visit your yard that need a ground source of water. And once again, we still need a rock of some kind in it so that the smaller things can get in there to get a drink and also still get out again. So, food and water. That brings us to shelter now for your backyard wildlife oasis. And for shelter, there are a lot of different things you can do, starting back with, again, let's look at bird houses. Well, remember that birds have a lot of different specific needs for their houses. So this is one kind of birdhouse. This particular one is a bluebird house. But you might have other kinds of birds after you survey to see what kind of birds are coming to your yard, or after you decide what kind of birds you would like to draw to your yard. And then just do a little bit of research, or again, call us here at your Topeka Zoo. We'll be happy to guide you through this also. Some kinds of birds need a different size of a cavity inside the birdhouse. They need a different size of opening to get into the birdhouse, or they need the birdhouse to be at different elevations. Some of them need to be 4 or 5 feet off the ground. Some need to be higher up into a tree. And sometimes they might need it to face a different direction because some birds like it when the opening is facing one direction and some like it when the opening is facing the other direction. And you can find all that online, or we can help you with that also. You want some really cool flying things that are not birds? Put up a bat house. Now, television has given bats a bad reputation, but in fact, bats are very beneficial to us. For example, if you could get just one little brown bat to live on your property, then you could sit outside all summer long every evening and watch all that beautiful wildlife that you've drawn to your yard and never get bitten by a mosquito, because one little brown bat will eat up to 1,000 mosquitoes and other flying insects at night that we consider to be pest animals that you would not want biting you. So if you can get one bat to take residence up on your property by putting up a bat house that welcomes that bat into your property, they will control your mosquitoes and other problems like that you might have all by themselves. So put up a birdhouse, put up a bat house, put up a house for native bees to draw some of our native bees, mason bees and other kinds of bees to your property, because all you have to do is put up a native bee house and they will take residence up in there. Bees are some of the best pollinators we have. They're absolutely essential to a healthy ecosystem, to a healthy environment, and you can make that happen just by putting up a place for them to call home. There are other really cool things you can put up, though, that provide shelter. We're still on shelter, from food to water to shelter. For example, if you like hummingbirds, one of the things that you can provide for shelter for a hummingbird is nesting material. If you provide nesting material, in this case, it's nothing more than simple cotton that you could put up at a higher elevation somewhere, staple it up to under the soffit of your house, staple it up to the tree trunk higher up, and they will find that as nesting material. And if that's where they're finding their nesting material, then they will make their nest somewhere nearby. Wouldn't that be cool to see small baby hummingbirds flying around your property? If you can't get up there with a staple gun, then you could do something like put it in a suet feeder or any other kind of feeder where you can just put that big cotton ball out there, hang it someplace where the hummingbirds will find it and they will use it for nesting material, which means if they're finding the nesting material near your property, then they will nest near your property and you'll get to enjoy having called in all those hummingbirds with the food that you're providing for them and the nesting material that you're providing for them. But again, don't forget the smaller things too. For example, a toad abode. You can put up a toad house in your garden and you'll get the benefits of having pest control without having to use chemicals on your garden. All you have to do for that is get one of these very simple 4-inch pots or bigger, very inexpensive to purchase anywhere in town, and put it opening down on a rock or a stick so that you have one side propped up off of the ground. When that side is propped up off the ground, the toads around your area will find that and they will be able to get under there with no problem and call that home. And then every evening, every night, they are eating up all of the pests that might otherwise cause problems for your garden. So you have non-chemical pest control for your garden, at the same time supporting the wildlife that is already out there. A win-win situation, good for them and good for you. Here's a new one though. We worked very hard in the spring to get rid of all those leaves, but consider leaving a pile of leaves in the corner of your yard, someplace where the two fence lines meet, back there where you might not be doing anything else with that spot anyway. Leave a pile of leaves in there, or leave a small brush pile back there. When you do that, you're providing a place for all those smaller things like frogs and toads and turtles and tortoises and lizards and things like that to call home, because they can get in there to call it home. They can hide from predators. They can have babies in there. They can do all the things that they need to find someplace in the wild to do in the wilds of your backyard, because you're creating a wildlife oasis for that wildlife. So leave the leaves in a pile someplace. Leave the brush, leave the bramble in a pile someplace that they can all call home, and you will find them going in and out of that on a regular basis. So food, water, shelter brings us to space, the fourth thing that all animals need to survive. Regardless of whether you're doing some of these things out in your yard, whether you're doing things like this on a pot in the balcony of your apartment, or anywhere else that you're doing some of these things, you will be able to draw wildlife to that space. But now we have to protect that space. One of the ways we protect that space is by not using chemicals on that space for garden or lawn that would be harmful to the very things that we're trying to draw to that area. So keep that space healthy by not using chemicals in that space. By remembering that Lawnmowers and weed whackers come out of hibernation at the same time that turtles and tortoises and snakes and all kinds of other wildlife also come out of hibernation. So use caution when you're mowing, use caution when you're weed whacking to make sure that we don't cause any injuries to the wildlife that we're trying to draw to our yard. We also want to do things like keep those cats inside. Cats belong inside. Domestic cats are not outdoor cats. They go out and they prey on a lot of things and cause a great deal of damage to wildlife. So if you're going to take your cat outside, learn it or teach it to walk on a leash. Learn how to put that animal on a leash and walk the cat outside. He can get all the sunshine he needs, he can get all the fresh air he needs, and then go back inside with you where that cat is not outside killing all the baby bunnies and baby birds and baby squirrels and all those other kinds of animals that you're calling to your yard. If you do have any questions about the ways that you can create a wildlife oasis for your backyard, give us a call, talk to us. We'd love to talk to you about it. Do some research online. Otherwise, bring all that wildlife into your yard so that you can enjoy it. Provide it with food and water and shelter, and then protect that space. Enjoy the wildlife. The wildlife will enjoy what you're doing for them. Again, a win-win situation. They get what they need, and you get what you love to be able to watch in the evenings. So enjoy your wildlife. Even if you're in the middle of the city, surrounded by roads and people and traffic, you can still make your yard into a wildlife oasis and help save the planet.